Last year, I reactivated my gym membership at my old college to start playing basketball again. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was very anxious and scared being there. This manifested as a form of pride, where I thought as an older alumni, more experienced in the real world, I should be beating these younger college kids in every game and in every play during basketball. I pressured myself to never miss a shot, to never make mistakes, to always be a focused and reliable teammate. I stopped going after a few months. The shame of not being able to consistently be the man and always win filled me with dread, anxiety, and embarrassment, and I just hated it. Everyone expects me to be great, and I'm not, I think hopelessly to myself. I didn't want to keep going back because every time I did, I knew I wasn't good enough. So a few months ago, I reactivated my membership again. And this time around, I'm having far more fun and I'm incredibly more relaxed, humble, and open-minded. And you know what? I'm playing much better than I even did last year. College kids are constantly praising me and my abilities and basketball skills, which I still can't quite believe is true sometimes being as old as I am. And you know the main reason behind this transformation and change? I'm not as prideful as I was last year. Now I know I'm just an alumni who isn't playing to look good or to be impressive or to always win or to never make mistakes. I still airball constantly in games. I miss easy shots, I can't guard really quick young players, but that's all right. I have peace of mind now, where I know I'm just there to have fun, do my best, help my team, and just enjoy my time playing while I can. Now, what does all this have to do with video game villains? Well, if you've played as many video games as I have and have seen as many video game villains as I've encountered, you'll know that one of the main themes and golden threads of the majority of video game villains and villains in general is pride. And the feeling that is almost always beneath pride is fear. And I was originally going to make a video about video game heroes and protagonists that I thought helped me be a better man, but when I started writing it, I just kept thinking back to the villains that made me better instead, and how much more interesting these characters were from a learning standpoint, and how so much of my life could be seen through the lens of the things I learned not to do. Pride has been called the father of all sins, and pretty much every major character defect, resentment, hatred, self-righteousness, greed, lust, rage, gluttony, all stem from pride in some way. And I've experienced all those character defects and more than just about anybody I know. Pride serves to cover up the real feeling behind it, fear, and is used to make people feel stronger and better than they really are. And when you take a look at several of the video game villains we'll be discussing today, some of the most iconic villains of all time, you'll almost always see that each of these villains has an endless amount of pride that fuels their actions, mindset, and justification for their misdeeds, and how it usually stems from a bedrock of fear. I once heard someone say, never take advice from someone you wouldn't want to trade places with. And while I see the wisdom in that, you wouldn't take marriage advice from someone on the brink of divorce, you wouldn't take financial advice from someone who just declared bankruptcy, I do disagree with this in part because you can take what these people say and do and use their story to not repeat their actions as a guidepost on what not to do. And there's a lot we can learn from video game villains, and a lot I've personally learned about how to be a better man from these characters. Also, I make videos like this all the time, so if you want more of them, be sure to click that subscribe button. So without further ado, let's get started. Pyramid Head is an obvious choice here, and there have already been 1,001 video essays breaking down just about every part of his personality, meaning, and identity, and I won't belabor the point here. As you're probably well aware, Pyramid Head is a manifestation of Silent Hill 2's protagonist James Sunderland's unending, undying guilt for being a pretty shitty husband to his late wife without spoiling things. In the game, you can't kill Pyramid Head. He's invincible, inexorable, and will not ever stop tormenting James until James admits his wrongdoing, accepts his past, and begins the long road of trying to forgive himself for the unforgivable acts he's done. One of the craziest and most interesting parts about Pyramid Head was that the more I thought about him, the more I couldn't help thinking that actually Pyramid Head is a really good thing for James. In my decade plus of therapy, because I'm pretty screwed up, I've learned that there are really important distinctions between the emotion of guilt, which can actually be a really productive and instructive emotion that helps you to not make the same mistakes, and the emotion of shame, which is essentially entirely unproductive and only serves to make you feel worse without helping you get any better. And Pyramid Head is guilt personified. He is an agent of cause and effect, pure and simple. He is the consequence of a horrible deed. And as we all know, it doesn't matter how much you try and numb yourself from the guilt of hurting someone with drugs or alcohol or sugar or TV or sex or anything else, that guilt will always be there, waiting to torment you with the truth of your wrongdoing. But it doesn't have to stay that way. You can absolve your guilt by confronting it with eyes wide open, fully admitting what you've done and opening yourself up to the fact that you did something really bad. And that's the first and most powerful step to feeling better again. In Silent Hill 2, James's refusal to confront and admit his actions leads Pyramid Head to run rampant and continue hurting and abusing everything around him. But once James finally admits what he's done and faces the very thing he's running away from ever since Maria died, is that the right word? Pyramid Head stops. He destroys himself, and James can finally move on. For me, I've come to appreciate the power of guilt. It's in stark contrast to shame, which I have no tolerance for, and I've spent years and years in therapy attempting to unlearn and heal from. True story, my therapist once asked me to write down every single memory I had of feeling ashamed, and I filled out no less than 18 pages of my journal with memories. But guilt, like Pyramid Head, can actually really help me be better and improve. This has become really apparent now that I am a parent. Sometimes I'll snap my kids for something stupid, like when they spill milk on the floor or when my toddler eats only half a snack and screams he wants a new one. But when I inevitably feel guilt for snapping my toddler for being a toddler, it helps me come back to my kid and make amends. Guilt is what gets me to my knees in front of my kids, looks them right in the eyes and says, "Daddy made a mistake by getting grumpy when he spilled the milk, and I apologize to them." And it's crazy, the time between when I snap my kids and the time I apologize to them are usually when they act out the most. They get grumpy and irritable and refuse to listen. But after I make amends, then they always seem to perk up. Like I can see the weight of the pain lifting from their shoulders in real time, right before my eyes. Then they go back to being happy little toddlers who spill more milk on the floor. Pyramid Head helped me appreciate the concept and emotion of guilt, because it's a key part of me getting better, being a more patient, more compassionate person. Look, I'm always gonna mess up. I've accepted that, and I've realized that I'll probably need to be apologizing to everyone around me, my kids, my wife, my friends, for doing stupid things and being an immature, petulant little kid myself. But I've also committed to being honest about these shortcomings, and when I feel guilt about something I've done, to listen to it, admit my wrongdoing, and begin making amends and being better as fast as I can. So, thanks, Pyramid Head. I actually think that in a lot of ways, Ganondorf is a really good example of a really boring villain who never really changes, who represents the same old, I want to kill the world for no reason villain that we've constantly seen in boring, annoying, completely forgettable movies and TV shows and video games ever since they were invented. If you take a look at Ganondorf, in every single Zelda game he's been in, he's the same guy. He has no other motivation to achieve his goals other than that he just kind of hates Link and Zelda and Hyrule and wants to be powerful. And it's not for like any cool reason, like that he believes only he can save this broken world by making terrible yet necessary choices like Thanos, for instance. Or avenging someone close to him who died, like Shadow does for Maria. Ganondorf just wants to rule the world, and that's pretty much as far as his motivations ever go. He has really no backstory, no hidden lore. In fact, Nintendo even keeps like retconning his identity and origin story because like at first he was this big monster guy, and then no, wait, he actually used to be a man who sacrificed his soul for power. No, wait, he's actually like a god based, whatever. Like I said, just a really strong example of a really boring villain. Dude has some great style though. But the reason why I've learned so much from this really one-dimensional villain was from him being just that. The embodiment of selfishness and ultimately evil. There is nothing to feel sorry for by Ganondorf. There's no reason to sympathize with him or see things from his perspective, and it's just the same old battle between light and darkness, good and evil with him. And actually, looking back in the most impactful video games I've ever played as a kid, which for me was a lot like Ocarina of Time, The Wind Waker, A Link to the Past, Majora's Mask, something about this battle between good and evil became implanted in my brain and never really left. It's a truth as old as humanity itself. There will always be evil in this world, even annoying, boring, one-dimensional evil, and the power of light and goodness must always stand up to this evil. And honestly, I've always really loved that simplicity. The hero's journey to overcome their own demons and save those around them from the evil trying to destroy the world. My favorite movies of all time reflect this. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, Gladiator, and big epics that present the same old story in new and different ways. Frodo and the Fellowship versus Sauron, Batman versus Joker, Link versus Ganon. In a lot of ways, Ganon has helped me remember that there's always going to be evil out there. Selfish people who just want to use and abuse others to get what they want. It's not new, or nuanced, or interesting in any way, it's just how it is. And Link doesn't really have to wrestle with anything on his end to fight. He's not like torn about his actions or unsure about what he must do or afraid to do the right thing. He just fights evil. Every time. That's like his whole thing. Doesn't even speak. And something about that always stuck with me. Zelda is my favorite franchise of all time. The soundtrack is pretty much the literal embodiment of adventure and the hero's journey, and I've always loved thinking of myself like that. I think when people have a villain, an enemy to fight against, it can really simplify life for them. It brings them clarity and certainty about what they need to do. And as one-dimensional as Ganon is, and probably always will be, I've really learned that just like Link needs to keep defeating this guy every single game that comes out, I also need to keep fighting the same evil and selfishness around me, both out in the world and deep inside me, every time it comes up. And that's enough. That's good enough. Thor from God of War Ragnarok is one of the most heartbreaking villains I've ever seen in video games. His father Odin has lied to and manipulated him so much, he's become a complete shell of himself, drowning himself in alcohol and self-loathing and pain. Even when he manages to stop drinking and try and be better, his father Odin ensures he falls off the wagon so he can continue using him as a tool. After Thor's sons are killed by Kratos, Odin commands Thor to stand down and not take revenge for his dead children, simply because Odin wants to lie and manipulate Atreus, just like he did Thor. In most scenes he's in, Thor is a drunken, angry, cynical, and ultimately broken man, unable to face his father, his wife, his past, or his hurt. By the end of his sad story, Thor finally reaches a level of clarity and realization about what he's become, and how he's almost lost his only remaining child Thrud through his actions and choices. While he ultimately falls to Odin's brutality and cruelty, he does it after choosing to be better, to stop destroying his life and everything around him like he's done for years, for the sake of his children. As a parent of 2 young kids now, it's been alarming to see myself behave and parent in the ways I most hated growing up, the behaviors I swore I'd never do. I promised myself I'd be better when I had kids of my own, and that I wouldn't shut down their emotions or invalidate their feelings like I experience from time to time. And I've caught myself starting to do just that sometimes. It's terrifying, honestly, how you can still behave in ways you swore you would stop doing. But seeing Thor's character arc was a great reminder that no matter how far you've fallen, no matter what you've done, you can always choose to be better from now on. It's easy to sit in self-loathing and lament about what you've done and how you messed up, but one of the hardest and most brutal truths I've learned as a parent is that your kids don't care if you do that. It does nothing for them for you to get drunk on hating yourself, feeling sorry for the things you did while never really doing anything about it. Remorse isn't enough. You need to take action. That's really what I took away from watching Thor's story. He had every reason to feel the way he did, with the world's worst father, his dead sons, with no one to help him get back up and be better. But that didn't matter. It doesn't matter for him, or you, or me, or anyone else in the world who's been hurt, discarded, humiliated, or manipulated by someone else. We need to be better anyway. And look, you don't have to be a parent for this to apply either. You don't have to repeat the same mistakes you saw growing up in any case. We have to break the cycle. We have to be better. We can't keep hurting and destroying things. We have to make the grown-ass man and woman decision to recognize that although we're hurt, we can't keep hurting others because of it. So, thanks, Thor. There are a lot of villains I couldn't cover here. Sephiroth, the Joker, David from The Last of Us, Shadow, The Covenant, Albert Wesker, and many more. But the point is, video games can give us prolonged, extended learning lessons from the villains and antagonists that far go beyond the simple, they're bad, now go beat them directives that existed in the first video games. These characters can show us parts of ourselves we don't want to see but need to be reminded of, so we don't become like them. The truth is, we all have the capacity to be evil and to let our hurt become others' hurt. But we don't have to. It's a hard choice, but ultimately one we need to make every day. And for me, I'm grateful that video games have given me so many reminders of that. Thanks for watching. And if you want to watch more of my videos, be sure to click that subscribe button.